and overlays with that governance and assurance and support for our wide-ranging business of over 900 people. Julie Jackson is responsible for our facilities management. That's the running, management, maintenance, and operation of the campuses. Peter Ward, our Director of Planning and Development, looks after our master planning, our strategy, and major capital projects, in particular partnerships with the NHS. We're unique in that Peter is a joint employee with the Guy's and St Thomas's Foundation, such that we have such intertwined relationships on the Guy's and St Thomas's campus. Charles Gallagher, I hope you love all that Charles' businesses do. He runs King's Community Business Services, which provides all of those things that students have choice over, whether it be King's Sport, King's Food, King's Residence, events, and venues. So that's Charles's bag. And Brendan Cahill is our Director of Portfolio Management, which provides a portfolio overview across our operations and estates, and assists with project and cost control across that patch. Keith, of course, we have many other pictures of Keith, who's with us as well tonight, who is our Chief Surveyor of estates and facility, and so the man ultimately responsible for much of the transactions that happen around the estate. And we were one of the first universities to introduce this role about 7 or 8 years ago, and it's a widely diverse career for a role for a chartered surveyor to have so many different types of transactions and responsibilities. Keith will talk a little more about that later.
Hi, my name's Nick O'Donnell. I'm the Director of Estates and Facilities here at King's College.
Working?
Estates and Facilities help staff and students at every turn, from their first greeting at a reception through to resolving issues throughout the campus and supporting students do their best work, their best research. We provide spaces that inspire students and staff to achieve their aspirations. We want our environment to look, feel, and operate as it should. That means that the spaces are open and welcoming to our community. So let me give you an overview of estates and facilities. We're divided into 4 primary different groups. Facilities management function, the King's Community Business Service, estates planning and development. Underpinning these 3 groups is our business services. Data is so important in the university, and we utilize it in lots of different ways, whether it's integrating with timetabling and events, whether it's understanding our compliance, or whether it's how we utilize our space. Rest assured, from drones to cell phones, we're using all available sensible technology in a measured way to support the best experience for all, along with data-rich decision-making. I'm incredibly proud of the work that my colleagues across estates and facilities do, transforming lives, be it through service, be it through sustainability, or be it through the actions we take every day to improve and to work together. And so when we talk about delivering world-class services for a world-class university, that means every interaction, every experience should be a joy to both the recipient and the person providing the service.
I think it's really important that we all contribute to the student experience, and that the students feel listened to, and that they have to play a part within our roles as well.
Being knowledgeable about the campus is really second to none in terms of actually empowering the students to feel free to talk to staff like myself. We're really an asset to them when you're actually able to tell them with a certainty how to get from one place to another.
I like to think that by being friendly and approachable, by speaking and engaging with staff and students, that any queries that come, whether they want to make it known or quiet, that they can speak to me and we can deal with it in an appropriate manner.
We've got amazing campuses that spans across the city. So each day is different. Each project is different. I get to be in the office, I get to go on sites and see a wide range of projects. And these can be light refurbishment to very major projects. And it's great to see buildings that are fit for use and are going to be there for many, many more years to come.
Being in the student facilities, I enjoy the diversity and inclusiveness. Like we can different kind of people here, different countries.
It doesn't matter where you're from, what background you're from, what your ability is, if you're the next superstar, or if you're just a complete beginner. We want to make sure we have something for everyone to take part and then leave here feeling happy about themselves and feel like they've had a really good time.
Amazing manager, amazing teams. We all stick together, we all help each other out. Being approachable, smiling, always happy and ready to help at any time.
The thing I enjoy the most about my job is probably the people, and that's not just restricted to members of my own team down here in Cornwall, but that's staff from all across the university. I very much feel that we're all part of one big team and that we've all got one common goal, and distance doesn't seem to get in the way of that.
Lo que más me gusta es la seguridad, la confianza, sentirme como en familia en esta gran universidad. Y estoy orgulloso de ello, la verdad. Y hacer sentir a los estudiantes como si estuviesen en su casa, hacerles sentir bien y pues me siento bien, confortable al final del día.
I'm proud to be part of the King's community and have been for 21 years, because when you switch on the news at 10 and see a King's academic that you know and you've worked with being interviewed, it makes you realise what a big impact that we're making at King's.
Estates and Facilities delivers trusted, responsive and reliable services that enable King's community to make the world a better place.
So for many people, there's a lot of things they didn't know. I love the fact that this version includes it entirely made in-house, by the way, that video. Credit to the entire team there who shot that. But a lot of people didn't realize, some of these facts around estates and facilities, and that does it very well. A lot of people didn't know some of this around the estates. We absolutely consume a huge amount of energy for all sorts of different reasons, much of it linked to research, but the equivalent of 23,000 households per annum. And so you can imagine we are, greatly concerned about the energy crisis. In terms of CO2, we're continually monitoring. We're well aware. We wish we could get off gas quicker. We recognise that we use a huge amount of gas, of 56 million kilowatts per annum. And water in itself is something as well we're very conscious of and continually seeking to drive down the usage of. As you will have seen if you've tried our Propel Air toilets either in the Strand or FWB or in any other places we're piloting them, always looking for opportunities. We're incredibly proud of our ranking for impact in all of the major sustainability league tables. It's one of the few league tables we really love because we think it does fairly represent our much wider work across sustainability. So, we're looking at everything at all the time, and we have a lot of measures that we track and seek to understand. I wanted to hand over to Paloma as much because we're going to do a bit of technical discussion with Keith. But before that, I wanted to share with you the views of Paloma, who is our Director of Operations and runs and manages many of the key risks around the estate. So, Paloma, I think the challenge, or what we said at the beginning, is it's a big, complex estate, and you have a lot of challenges helping us.
Hello, everyone, and good evening. Thank you for having us all here today. And I come bringing a different perspective, and often when we're talking about real estate, we're talking about big deals, big properties, 10.6 times the size of Wembley. And I think as you approach real estate, one of the biggest challenges is ensuring that the estate deliver on its purpose, on its mission. So it's not just bricks and mortar, but the people that will be using that, the legacy it helps build. And from my perspective, it's in a way is looking beyond those physical environments and connecting them specifically here at King's in terms of the experience they provide, both academically, but also non-academically. So if you look at areas such as King's Community Business Services, where we provide a lot of the services that the students don't have to opt in or sign up for, is very much about complementing the experience on campus, making sure that they can get more than if they were attending a different university. So we are really privileged in the buildings that we have. And I always like to share with people, I love the buildings at King so much that I got married at the Strand a few years ago and had my wedding reception at Bush House. The picture is seen there because why not? And it's a beautiful building. So I shared this because it's something I'm very proud of in terms of being able, not many people get to get married at a place of work, but it's proud of the state that we have, but also the services that go with. So a lot of the services that Judy Jackson, for example, leads in facilities management are things that are invisible to the eye or should be invisible to the eye. And so our challenge is really making sure that we are able to evidence the impact that the invisible service has, not only when things go wrong, which is the minority of times, in fact, but that's the time when people mostly engage with us. So from an operational perspective, running being able to bring together these different areas, and the last 2 weeks we have been working. We have started working on our functional plan. So it's a really good time actually for me to share some of the challenges we have in terms of bringing consistency in how we report the value that the state delivers, both financially in terms of capital, but also the value that it delivers, as I said, to the academic and non-academic experience of students and staff. So looking at opportunities that our state can provide us with, that go beyond the traditional use sometimes, but also looking at risks, responsibilities as the stewards of the King's estate. We have legal responsibilities, we have moral responsibilities, safety responsibilities. So it's really complex. And that's not to take away from the real estate as in its glory in terms of the deals it brings and the exposure that it provides Kings with, but is to add a bit more color to that picture. In terms of the staff, as Nick said earlier, almost 900 staff here from all sorts of backgrounds. We are proudly the biggest professional services team at King's, and I can say hand on heart the most diverse as well. So managing that, looking at the impact and the opportunities that our state then can provide to staff, both in our local communities, in terms of accessing employment, all the way to having a more diverse leadership and how we have people go through the ranks. One of the challenges you probably may have noticed or will notice in real estate is there may be a lack of diversity. And so for us, it's really important to normalize and expose our staff to the opportunities that exist. Nick mentioned also the opportunities for internships and so on. So allowing people to explore career options that they may not have thought about before. So just to close off, bricks and mortars are really exciting, and seeing some of the projects, especially as you walk through the Strand, is incredibly exciting. We'll be talking about master planning later on. But what the built environment goes on to provide our communities, it's, in my view, the most exciting part. So it's about enabling people through our buildings. So thanks again, and happy to answer any questions towards the end of the presentation.
Thanks very much, Paloma. I've lost my ability to, there we go. I was going to touch briefly just to give you an idea, you'll have seen glimpsed in the video, the vast array of tools and data that we use. We actually could do so much more. In the outside world, every shop you walk past, every shopping center you go to, every bus or train and tube you get on is gathering data from you and tracking you in some way or another. It's quite remarkable. That data has been sold on to other people. We don't do any of that, oddly enough. We don't do any tracking of individuals or tracking of people or tracking of data or have any of that because over a long period of time, our student community have been super cautious about that type of activity. But it's absolutely out there. And it exists and has been used widely more and more in real estate. Indeed, probably the most technologically led building in the land is 22 Bishopsgate. If you get a chance to go there on a visit, you should definitely do it. If you were really interested in a visit, we could probably help organize one with the managing agent. It's a crazy building. You walk in, it's got facial recognition for staff who work there. Everything is run off your phone. So high-tech buildings are definitely there. We as a university have an awful lot of data, and we've a huge amount of sources of data that we do try to integrate, we do try to understand. And that's everything from the till data in the restaurants through to near real-time energy consumption. We've thousands of college data and Power BI dashboards that help us bring together. And to a certain extent, we've an element of data overload. And one of the biggest challenges for the university is space. And so as part of trying to make our space more visible for everybody who uses it, we, with the help of others, developed a 3D model of the university that just continues to grow in strength and strength. If you'll forgive me, while I have a glass of water, we have, I think, if I hit this correctly, we have about a 1-minute video. It's a bit of a promo video for the kit that's called Vantage, but it's as you'll see, mostly our buildings. And if I hit that, you should.
Can't hear it, Nick.
You can't. Okay, so it allows you, it's a system that allows you to interrogate your estate in lots of different ways, understand the floor plates and how you use them, not necessarily linked to real time, but it really allows you to interrogate and export data in lots of different ways. But it highlights how you use space, how you can master plan, and how you can consider different types of space, how it's been used, pull data down. So a really useful facility to be able to view your estate and help people make big decisions around strategy, around where they're going, how they're going to plan growth or contraction or maintaining flexibility.
I mean, I can add to that and just very quickly and just say that it's not a very exciting part of the job I do, but we've released this video to our business rates advisors who have sought to make savings on the business rates we pay, and they've used the data on this video. And I think we recently just put an appeal on the Strand, which between the Shoe, the Quad, and the King's building, which should make us a saving in the tune of sort of £250,000 in terms of the business rates we pay and the repayment of that be coming our way at some point. So it's actually, it's not only used by internally, but where we can get permission if we do use it externally with our advisors, and it's a really, really useful tool.
And it's a model, look, we're very proud of it. We update it every 2 months. It's not live, it's not trying to be live, it's a communications tool. I wanted to, before I hand off to Keith, and we're going to have an interesting discussion about 2 different big transactions of the last year. We loved, we loved the opportunity to showcase some of the things that the college does after the event. I wanted to remind you of opportunities with estates and facilities. Please, please, please. We have had interns from CREPS before, paid internships, which have been very successful. But we're also here if people want to use the estate as part of their dissertation. If there's something in particular they were thinking of studying that we could perhaps help with, we're particularly keen and have reached out to some Sustainable Cities Master students, but keen to hear from all who might have an interest in some of our environmental activities, or indeed help us with projects that we have environmental concerns about that may match a dissertation or a thesis. We also have grant-funded research activity. And we have from time to time opportunities to get involved in that way. And likewise, we're open to supporting particular research around perhaps attitudes and energy saving opportunities and the like. So we're very open to supporting grant funded and research activity directly. And then look, finally, we keep an open mind about creating property internships. We do often need support. Poor Keith is knackered from the amount of work he has to do, and we are a good, lively department. But it is he has a lot on his shoulders, and we love bringing in people who are considering a professional career within the industry. And we do promote the RICS, the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, but we welcome the opportunity for students who are seeking a longer term career in property to come and talk to us. We were encouraged by Rob Crawley of Sustainable Cities and Geography that we should always put an end date on applications for grants and dissertations. So we said the end of April would probably align with people who are making key decisions about planning for this year. But look, as ever, book early to avoid disappointment, I think. Keith, what would you add to the opportunities of working at King's and helping us with our making the world a better place?
I was going to say that we are, and I think a number of people on this call might know that we had Carl Eulis last year, who certainly I think benefited from his time. I'm not sure if he being a classic student that he was quite ready for the world of property, but I think that he found it very useful. Seeing how we work and just the kind of work that we do behind the scenes in terms of running the university and the estates, and just and what we do sort of for our students in terms of the satisfaction and student satisfaction and preparing our buildings. Certainly, I think he was quite surprised the year he was just how much work we chucked through during the summer to get the university ready for start of term.
Yes, indeed. No, Carl was great fun, and he helped us with selecting some of our advisors as well. We welcomed having student involvement. On those appointment panels. People often wonder, how does it all happen? But look, the real, we're trying to encourage you to take careers in property. And now, if you were having trouble sleeping and cocoa hasn't worked. We have something else can definitely help you, but it's really interesting, and why I love this next section with Keith, that is something you asked for. So remember, this came about because you asked for it. Was some of the good examples of the technical detail that go on in property transactions. So we probably try to do this in 10 minutes, and then that'll leave us loads of time for questions. And we'll take questions along the way because it's quite complicated. I will have to be your slide driver, yeah. I think, Keith.
Brilliant.
So we've got two cases for you tonight that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the rent review on Bush House, and then we're going to talk about a little transaction where we lucratively sold a leasehold interest in some parking spaces. Sorry, Keith, over to you.
Sorry, I was just going to say, for those of you who weren't on the call, the introduction, my name is Keith Holyhead. I am the Chief Surveyor for the university. My background is I did 12 years working in private practice in the West End, dealing in agency and investment and general practice. And I've been at King's now for 6 years. So I have a sort of a chartered surveyor with 12 plus years experience as being a surveyor. So I've got a sort of, my background is general practice, which you tend not to do nowadays if you go into the larger firms, because you tend to be specialised into a subject. But there's always the ability to move around as required as a graduate. So today we're going to talk about the Bush House Buildings Rent Review. For those of you, most of you have been in Bush House, I hope, if not only to the bar and to the wonderful pizza restaurant on the lower ground floor. We have Nick to thank for that. Bush House
the vegan on the 8th floor. I think the vegan on the 8th, yes. Roots restaurant is also equally popular. Not my idea, though. I'd never thought the vegan would work. I'm staggered by the queues.
So sort of the background on Bush House. It used to be the BBC World Service. It is owned by a Japanese firm, Kato. King's took the lease in 2015. And the leases within Bush House buildings are all run for the same term, and all based on 5 yearly open-only rent reviews. Next slide, please, Nick. So this is the sort of overview of where we started from. You might not recognise some of these buildings. So Bush House is what we call centre block. Strand House, 300 Strand, is the south east wing, so that's where the KCLSU are. King House is the northeast wing, and the northwest wing is where we have the gym on the ground and lower ground floors, and the upper floors are actually still occupied by external tenants to the university, with the ability for the university to grow in that space come 2025. And then in Melbourne House, we have an overriding lease of that building that kicks in December 2024. But the university has taken various floors within that building to accommodate some of the increased footprint that's required by the increase in student numbers. So I sort of won't talk through the slide very much, but it's in total it's 314,000 square feet. Sorry, I deal in old money, being a surveyor, and the average passing rent is £39.37, which is quite a low passing rent given the location of the buildings. But when we took the leases, we took a very long lease, but we only benefited from a short amount of rent free. The other rent free was given to us by discount at the starting. The headline rent when the lease is commenced, and a 90%, well, the open market rental value is discounted by 10% essentially. So the passing rent per annum, we can all see at the present, pre sort of rent review in September 2020 was just over £12 million, which is quite a lot of students' income to pay for that. So as I was saying, we are all bound. All the buildings are held on separate leases. However, all the buildings have been drawn on the same format. So this is a very brief overview of the rent review clause. All leases will have a rent review clause of some form. So the rack rental value is the open market value based on a hypothetical term, 10 years without a break. And with all these things, it's willing parties doing a transaction on an arm's length basis, and then you take net effective and rent free away. So and wrapped up in that is your fit out period, which is one of the negotiations we came to, and we'll get to later on in the presentation, about how you can benefit if you can argue that your fit out period is shorter. It gives you a benefit on your open market rent because it means market inducement is longer.
It's a interesting point that it's a very complicated world when you look at rent reviews within large properties. That the starting point of it's a simple negotiation of my landlord's upping the rent by X, he wants you know, so much more. Actually, it's in English and in English law, you are protected, and you are given an ability to measure and determine and come at it within a very structured way. But it's a specialized area, and it almost certainly, whilst so many things, as Keith would say, come back to the cost per square foot and the increase that the agent can achieve, it's not a space to be entered into lightly. And as Keith will explain, we have to secure the best advisors for the university, both to ensure we got the advice, but also to ensure that the other side didn't get the advice.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing around the sort of the Bush House buildings, whilst the university loves occupying the whole building, most tenants don't like occupying a whole building, because then you have to start looking after the plants, you start looking after the common spaces, so you get a lot of wasted usable space. You only pay your rent on the net affected space, so the usable space where you can actually run your business from. But when you've got a whole building, there's a whole lot of space that sits inside that, your corridors, you know, the big central staircase within Bush House and the other buildings that a typical tenant wouldn't like. And you know, in London now, certainly in the city, you can get those big floor plates where you just have the 100,000 square foot floor plate where you can just sit there and just occupy the space you're going to run your business from, which makes running of the business a lot easier. Next slide, please, Nick. So as part of the negotiation, we went through a procurement process. Jones and Sal were acting for Cato, so they were there. We appointed Savills, having gone through a full procurement process, to appoint Savills to act on our behalf. And once instructing Savills, this is what the landlord produced in terms of the total uplift in rent. So if you have a look, I think the key areas to concentrate on here is the rent free, the fit out period, they're all very interesting, but the total uplift per annum they were initially looking for is just over £3 million, which is quite a large increase, given that the rent review was taking place at the peak of the COVID time. So it was September 2020. Just, you know, there was very, very little deals going on in the open market. So the actual rent review was taking place in a very difficult time for the office market in central London. Next slide, please. Here we go. Contentious issues for negotiation. This is the professionals via Savills. This is what they picked out, and we picked out as a team that we should be arguing in terms of where we should be getting a lower rent. Jones and Sal and Cato put a premium on the Bush House building as the key building on the estate. The effect of COVID on the open market rental value, because there are no transactions going on. So it's very difficult. At the time, you could argue there was no market, because there was evidence pre-COVID, there was evidence post-COVID, there was very little market transactions going on at that period in time. And then the other key issue that we picked out was the fitting out and rent-free periods that they had attributed to the building. And there was a lot of negotiation that went on in between what we did and what we agreed. Next slide, Nick, please.
Yeah, the building took longer to fit out because it wasn't as clean of asbestos as we had hoped and other things, so there were some further complications.
But we argued that it'd be quicker to fit out, not slower, because it would help our net effective rent, because you then discount by a greater number of months. So as part of this process, as I said, we went out to specialists. Savills were appointed, and then we appointed a chap called Gavin Murgatroyd from G&T to act on our, I think that Turner and was it G&T to act on. I might have written that when I was having a G&T at night, maybe. To act on our behalf. So Gavin was the #1 agent, #1 specialist within London across all the court cases that go to arbitration for rent reviews on the basis of fitting out periods of buildings. He was secured as the #1. It was very difficult to get that procured correctly, but it was felt that there was such a large amount of potential revenue that could be saved on this, that we'd have to get the #1 specialist within London to agree and report on what our fit out periods are. So as you see at the top, we've come to a rent-free period. So this is based on a 10-year term. Don't forget, straight 10-year term. So across the boards, we're saying that all the buildings on a 10-year term will be 27 months rent-free. Landlords fit out periods is you can see is what he said, and then the fit out periods that were agreed are at the bottom. So as you can see, we made significant amounts of savings in terms of shortening the fit out periods for each building, which benefited Kings, because it meant the market inducement was longer, thus the discount from headline rent is larger to get you back to what is a net effective rent, which is what you pay over the term.
And look, in a property way, and given what we're doing here tonight, we paid a lot for Gavin's services, but he was only helped us for a couple of days. There was a sort of a gasp of how much do these property professionals cost. But given the difference between where we started and where we finished, you know, it's a huge amount per annum. And sometimes you really do need to gear up and make sure you are getting, and that you're getting the best advice, but you're also making sure that your opponents in a transaction has respect for the advisors you've appointed. So listen carefully, I think, when people say we need to get in expert advice, or I want to bring in this particular barrister or this particular advisor, because you can, it's well worth getting the right people on board, without a doubt. It strengthens your case. And a large institution like King's, fortunately, you know, we're very credible when we turn up at these people's door and say, can you come and help us?
Exciting.
Holder bank offer.
Yeah, so as part of the negotiating period, we had a lot of open dialogue, and I haven't included all the negotiations because there were numerous numbers that were traded between the two of us, and it wasn't protracted, but it took quite a long time to get to where a level where we thought we were close enough that we could issue a colder bank offer on the on Cato, and we'll go on to explain what a colder bank offer is at the moment. So the considerations were, right, let's go and do a colder bank offer. And if a colder bank offer isn't agreed, or a protected or a suitable outcome is not achieved following the colder bank offer, then the university was considering applying to the RICS to appoint an arbitrator to act on our behalf. And an arbitrator works essentially as they're appointed essentially as by the court. So they're external party that the decision they make is binding. You have to write to them as dear sir, because you can't call them dear Mike. It's not acceptable. They are externally appointed by the RICS, and what happens with an arbitrator is that both the landlord and the tenant agents, professional advisors, would be submitting a report that argues where the rent should be settled, and the arbitrator will make his award, and that award is binding on both parties, save as to costs. Next slide, Nick, please. Here we go. Here's a colder bank offer. So a colder bank letter is a letter containing a settlement offer and written without prejudice, save as to costs. So that's so basically you're putting in what you think the level should be, and if it's not agreed, generally at arbitration, if the arbitrator comes in your favour, he picks up your costs. The landlord will pick up the costs. So if it went to arbitration, the arbitrator agreed with Kings on their Calder Bank offer, Cato would have picked up our costs of arbitration, not anything more, but just of arbitration. So, but there is a risk around that in terms of actually the arbitrator could go the other way, and you can completely, you could be hit with a higher rent than you'd ideally agree at negotiation. Because what happens at arbitration is you both go to your furthest points of view. The landlord will come in a really high level, the tenant will come in at a really low level, and the gap gets really bigger. So it's a really difficult. It's quite good to do in some circumstances, but it's quite unless you are 100% sure you are going to win that arbitration, it's very difficult to do. Next slide, please, Nick.
I was just going to say the Calder Bank letter. Now, those of you who are legal eagles will be interested. Comes from the Calder Bank versus Calder Bank case. What do you know when you get a double named case? Anybody guess what you know when you typically get the same name versus another name? Nothing but the oldest parting of the ways, a divorce. And it was Mrs. Calder Bank, I'm delighted to say, who served her husband with a sworn affidavit to the effect that he could keep the family home. She must have really hated him. 1975. He rejected her claim. They went to court. The judge awarded her a higher cost than the value of the house, but sought to award her costs as well. And she was able to claim that she didn't have to accept the costs because she'd made a perfectly reasonable offer that was below what was accepted, what the judge had come at. And she did get her money, and she didn't have to pay costs because she had made a reasonable offer that in fact had been rejected. So there you go. Property is full of these tiny things, and everybody plays their part. I think that we got to. I'm conscious of time. We don't want to. There'll be quizzes on this later. If you can't name all the numbers in this cell later on, there'll definitely your MAs will be at risk.
I think the two really want to look at here is the we'd Calder banked at 675.
999. Sorry, 676.
676 increase. Jones Lang LaSalle had the increase at 939. Then if you flip to the next slide, I think the agreement is even better than that. Oh, this is just market evidence. The key thing, just look at here, is as you look through this, and I think you have those slides, is the overall headline rent. As you can see, some of these headline rents are in excess of where our headlines rents were.
70, 64, £77 a foot.
So we were worried if we went to arbitration that we would get an outturn that wasn't in our favour.
It's very risky going to arbitration, but this is where we ended up.
So this is where we end up, yeah. So as you can see, from the starting point of asking for 3 million, we ended up with an increase of 808,000.
A really great outcome.
Yeah. So nil increase on North West Wing and Melbourne House, biggest increase on Bush, and then sort of minor increase on the Strand. So in terms of the outcome for the university, it's a great outcome for the university that sort of beats all the expectations we thought we were going to get to.
And fees were modest for the whole scheme. Professional support, because we have Keith driving so much of this, our fees to both Savills and one or two individual specialist advisors and remeasurements are we're sub £50,000.
Yeah.
Very quickly, how to make money selling a leasehold interest. We're gonna really quickly skip through this, Keith.
Yeah, sorry,
I want to get. So you might know our neighbour next door, Derwent. You see it in the what's going on. They got a hoarding up. They're planning a nice building with an extension.
And this is the picture of the extension. Sorry, there.
Sorry.
just as you can see, the extension where it goes into the courtyard. This was just around the development of the courtyard space. Essentially, most of that blue space, not all of it, I couldn't find it, is land leased to Kings for car parking. So next slide, please, Nick. So freehold is Derwent. lease to Cato, sublease to Kings, with 8 years unexpired, passing rent of £500 per annum.
Per space. So we had a bunch of parking spaces in central London when our policy, we don't have parking, we don't provide parking, we don't want parking. We love turning public spaces, turning parking into public spaces. We do it. We hate parking. We not sustainable. And we recognise you have to have 1 or 2 spaces for campuses of our size, but quite operationally, we don't provide parking, and we don't provide disabled parking, and that's a point of principle.
Next slide.
So we got a bunch of parking spaces we don't really need.
And then as part of it, we had underlet, Cato had underlet some of the Undercroft back to Mapley Inland Revenue, and as part of this is we would take this space back and hand back the car parking spaces to Derwent London for a premium to allow them to carry on their development of the building.
So when we acquired the whole of the Bush House estate, we acquired what's often called a fag end. It's an odd phrase, but it relates to the end of a cigarette butt. A fag end of a lease, which is, not long enough to do anything with, short enough that it's just an operational thing you're going to put up with that you recognise you're going to lose. But given the enclosed estate, very difficult to do anything of any real merit with it.
So, in order to expedite the negotiations, we had to see Derwent and Kings instructed CBRE to do a joint valuation of the space, and you can see they came up with a lease surrender premium. I think it's a 2 key one. The Undercroft is 270, and the car park was 320,000, which would be a payment to Kings to accept the surrender of that space. I think Nick and I knocked our heads together. We didn't like that figure. Nick didn't like the figure that I was asking for, but let's see where we got to, Nick. Hey, there we go, 1.1 million.
So by being able to recognise in a really transparent way with Derwent and work really honestly and transparently, we were able to say, what is the value of our land before your development, and what is the value of our land after your development? In what way does our leasehold contribute to the value of your development? And we've learned this from the chair of the Estate Strategy Committee, which is that it's a perfectly fair conversation to say, I need to understand the value I'm helping you create, and then I want some of that upside.
Yeah.
So it's not being greedy. And I think they were a little taken back. They had hoped that by jointly appointing CBRE, that the university would just look at the CBRE value and say, great, yeah, 590, lovely, thank you very much. Far more than we thought we'd get. We said, no, that just establishes the metrics by which we're going to use now to calculate up what is a fair premium for the space. And then we were very fortunate that we had a member of the Estate Strategy Committee who we asked to be an honest broker between the two of us, and he never wants to work for us again because he hated having to do that.
But I mean,
because he completely got our argument that you're entitled to a share in the value you create.
And I think the outcome is a pretty good outcome from where we started.
But and trust me, we're spending that money in a very sustainable way. We don't often get to do this to make out like bandits selling central London car parking spaces, but we did so in a very open and transparent way. And yeah, we evolved ultimately 4 times the rental value of the properties. Please, questions, how can we help, or can I open the floor up? And I'm free to run on a little if others are as well. Apologies that we talked for so long.
The hand up, I think.
Yeah, sorry.
Ashwin, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just actually researching about the Bush House, and I found a very interesting fact saying that in 1929 it was the most expensive building in the world. Like, is that true, or was it quite interesting? I found that.
it was unique in its construction as it was built,
Mm-hmm.
certainly, and I've no doubt there was a peak time when it was probably the most expensive building built. It was considered a World Trade Center of sorts, so it was considered hugely ambitious, and in a less than popular part of town, for all sorts of reasons. So yeah, it's. I don't doubt that at the time of it was being built, it was certainly one of the grandest buildings being built. And if you look further into the history, you'll know that it's missing a sort of 25-foot cupola on the very top of it, which was never built because, despite it being in all the plans, they decided not to go ahead with it.
And I think if you look at it, it's designed by two different people and built by two different builders, which is always interesting when you strip it back to shell and core, as we did.
Yes, the buildings are built differently, which you think, oh, this is all a matching set. They're absolutely not.
All right, very interesting. Thank you.
Sorry, now I got to use the question function. P Long.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. It was really insightful. I wanted to ask, because the Strand Street is being developed and pedestrianized, the road is being closed. How did that impact the valuation of the buildings around it?
So I think in terms of the valuation, when we did the value, it hadn't been done, so you can't take that as part of the valuation for a rent review purpose. But it's only there are issues that always cause around access with pedestrianisation, but it's only ever going to have a positive impact on the valuation of the building because it improves the streetscape outside. So it makes it it becomes more desirable and will have a positive. Well, depends on which side. If you're the tenant, it's a negative impact, but if you're the landlord, it's a positive impact on the building valuation and likely rental value as well.
Thank you very much.
It's enhancing the area, there's no doubt about it. One of our colleagues described the pedestrianisation as being the greatest gift to the college since our charter. Look, we were, Keith and I were sceptical Westminster Council would ever come forward with the 20-odd million investment that they've been making, and you can absolutely see where the money's going and making it a really secure and safe space. And apologies for those students who've had years upon years of construction at the Strand. It has ever been thus, I'm afraid. Iva, you had your hand up and it's gone down.
I have a question. So you mentioned that King's uses 71 million kilowatts of energy every year. And my question is, how reliant is King's on fossil fuels and what's being done to move to a more sustainable form of energy?
So look, that's a complicated question. Today, of all days, we were proud to say that we ran on 100% renewable energy in terms of what we secured. We do use way too much gas, and we have continued to, renewable electricity. We have made tremendous progress in decarbonising the infrastructure of the estate, and particularly the move off oil, heavy and light and diesel, and in driving far more efficiency out of the systems that we have, particularly the boilers and heat systems. We have a very ambitious decarbonisation plan, and indeed we've exceeded one of the reasons we rank so highly in the world rankings for our sustainability impact is in part because we've succeeded the decarbonisation plans that were originally adopted by the college in 2010. So the 10-year strategies that were set out in 2010, we've exceeded significantly in carbon reduction and continue to drive carbon reduction opportunities. I have to say, I don't have a quick answer for the replacement of gas, and I have many buildings where I can't easily turn them over to be electric. I would welcome, and we continue to look at in different ways, what opportunities are for all electric buildings. And as getting us all fossil fuels, that's the biggest one. and all the more relevant now as people see, the different challenges and the different dependencies on different types of gas. I say it's important that you asked today about sustainable and renewable, and there's a really subtle, unfortunate thing happening in the energy market at the moment. As I'm sure you see, there's all sorts of turmoil in the energy market space. But the certification of green energy has risen by the cost of doing it has risen by over 600%. So it's going to rapidly become unaffordable to certify the greenness of your energy. And we just think that's a really sad and retrospective step. To be fair, I think clean energy is what we will hear more of, but that's not what we want to do, and that's not what we aspire to. We aspire to being run on renewable energy. Clean energy, as many of you will know, is generally nuclear power. So sorry, quite a detailed answer there for you. Marina, hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Marina?
Yes, hi, thank you.
Hi there.
Keith mentioned expanding into certain floors of Melbourne House and Bush House, Northwest. To what extent would this be sufficient? And if King's food count would happen to increase again, is there scope for expansion?
Uniquely at the Strand, I think we can say is that we always took Melbourne House with knowing that we would get the building in 2025 essentially, to allow for any expansion as required, and the same with the Northwest Wing. We took that building on the basis that we knew that if it was required that we could have expansion. Now we can turn the tap on and off on those because if it's not required, we can lease it out as we do with the Northwest Wing. If it is required, and as we've seen in certain parts of Melbourne House, where as the students and academic requirements numbers have increased due to the student bowl, we have sort of piecemeal bolted on the floor as and when it's required. But so there is always the ability, and we use that space with the ability to do that, but there is also the ability to work more efficiently within the space we have. So there's a lot of work going on around hybrid working for professional services staff to make the use of our footprints more efficient, where no one has a desk and you just book a desk and come in. Nick, do you want to ask a bit more on that?
Yeah, look, I think we build future flexibility into our leasing arrangements, bearing in mind the purpose of tonight. And for those of you who spot the really clever things, you'll see JLL, Jones Lang LaSalle, they actually run Melbourne House still, yet they don't provide the front of house services in Northwest Wing because we have the gym on the ground floor, and that was an all student experience that we wanted in the Northwest Wing. We said we'll run that front of house because we want it to be a King's experience. And our tenants politely had no choice in the matter. They were getting a free gym, so it wasn't even a major point of consultation for us. Whereas conversely in Melbourne, where up until very recently Cato had overall control and still does for another 5 years or so, but it suits us to keep JLL there, to keep as almost an honest broker as a managing agent, rather than us trying to deal with multiple tenants.
And just on the Northwest Wing, we've done the deal we have at the moment with the tenants in there who are paying rent. Actually means that the King's Gym that's on the ground and basement are sitting there essentially rent free, because we're making more money from the money we get from our subtenants than it actually costs us for the building. So at this present moment in time, it is beneficial for the university. But the university and our requirements of space always takes precedent over any external lettings.
Okay, thank you so much.
Great. P. Long, I think, and then Akash.
Hi, I wanted to ask about the internship opportunity that you mentioned.
Sure.
When would it be, and how do we apply?
So we are, I tell you what, if you're interested, drop Keith a line and come and have coffee. So we've yet to come up with this year's format, but we're always interested in finding out and creating projects where our students can help us. We don't have a formal plan. We've created informal plans in the prior years, where we look for a lot of activity that we've got at the moment is around leveraging our data and our knowledge of what we're doing around the estate and how we're using our data, in particular our 3D model. But if you've an interest in coming and spending time with estates and facilities, I'd say in the very first instance, come by Lavington Street for a coffee.
Just on that, with Carl, we did work it around his academic year, and we gave him some holiday. But but we did work it around. He couldn't miss
the skiing season. I think he couldn't miss the skiing season.
It was more around the summer. We did work around the summer, the summer holidays for him in terms of end of teaching, and then the ability to go back and do his final year. So that we were very flexible with that too.
And look, we're really proud to support CREPS, and it's the first time we've done it online. Thank you for coming back. Thank you to all who've come. Thank you to those who are watching. We would normally be here with wine and beer, which is why the reason we think everybody comes is because we provide complimentary drinks and nibbles for courtesy of King's Food. I'm really grateful to Paloma and to Keith for all the effort they put in prepping for this. And thank you very much, Arkesh, for setting the whole thing up for us and getting everybody in here today. And I hope you get a high number of views on the playback. I'll be watching the playback information, I'm sure. Keith, we release it in such a way it'll be public, I'm hoping, so that students can get to it. We'll have to make sure.
I think that's on your machine, so we'll need to work it.
Okay.
You've done the recording yet?
We got invited. Yes. Okay. So we'll just make sure. Please let us know if there's trouble viewing it, and we'll get AV to help if need be, as we didn't set it up as a teaching session as such. But look, as we say, as ever, really happy. Great to see so many people here, and thanks to all our presenters. Arkesh, events, announcements. I'm sure you have more meetings to go to for the next CREPS event. Or over to you.
On behalf of CREPS, I want to thank all of you, Nick, Keith and Paloma, for taking the time to present and take questions. So it was very informative, and I'm sure we'll have more views from the recording than we have from the people who've attended, and that they'd find it equally exciting and informative. So that's all from me. Thank you, all three of you again.
Thanks very much, folks.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good week.